Sometimes we apologize too much. Eager to please, we dim our light to accommodate others. We don't take the risk we should. We align with the status quo instead of challenging it. For this episode, I was joined by Imani K. Murray, a travel entrepreneur and influencer, to discuss exactly what it takes to live our very best lives. Hint, it involves us becoming unapologetic, to stop apologizing and start living. I recruited her as my co host for this conversation because she is the queen of taking chances and maximizing every moment. Join us on this journey to unleash and become our unapologetic selves. From discussing Black women's experiences abroad to finding the courage to become an entrepreneur, there is something in this episode that will resonate with everyone. Please take a listen and remember to follow the podcast. Enjoy. Okay, hello everybody. It's Soraya, and welcome back to the Purposeful Professional Podcast. Today, I have another special guest. I have Imani Murray of Imani K Travels. So please introduce yourself to the people on the podcast.
Hey y'all, so my name is Imani Murray. I am the founder and I guess CEO of Imani K Travels, which I started because I really love traveling and I want other people to be able to travel, specifically people that look like me, and educate them about travel. So I'm an engineer that pivoted into a passion and we're here now.
Nah, that's so powerful. I wasn't planning to start with this question, but I want you to talk about like your mission in travel and then specifically for people that look like you. Like why is it so important for you to open up travel for people of your culture and your race of black people, for black people, excuse me.
Definitely. My own experiences have fueled it because I've seen how much travel has impacted me. So, one thing that I really like to start off with when I talk about how travel has changed me is travel allowed me to value myself as a Black woman. Now, I know coming from America, where it's like Black girl magic and like, Black girl winning, all that stuff. I don't know, all those trends over the years, but I didn't truly feel that until I, moved abroad. I graduated high school early and I lived in China for a little bit because I wasn't really interested in my all white high school. I didn't feel like I found my place there. And when I moved to China to teach English and study Mandarin, is really when I felt appreciated. Like people, natives, locals would just be interested in my story. They'd be interested in me, not only because they hadn't seen a lot of Black people, but also just because they were genuinely curious that a 17-year-old would be what hundreds, I don't know if it's hundreds of thousands, but thousands of miles away. And so that experience really showed me who I was, and it grew me into who I am now. And I want other people to have that same experience, especially Black women, because I feel like too often we can be set aside and pushed aside here, and we don't truly come into our value until it's too late. And travel allows you to do that so quickly. You just value yourself at levels that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had stayed here.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. That's super powerful. I love it because I think that it represents the fact that we really do need to be the type of people that we go out there, we do things, we put ourselves out there. And I mean, you're not the first Black woman that has told me that they found themselves abroad. And it's
Yes,
crazy because it makes us realize that things like Black girl magic and Black joy to a certain degree in America are kind of superficial because
they are.
where's the joy and the magic if you don't really want to learn my story, who I am? And I think one of the things that Black people experience abroad that they might not experience here is that they're allowed to be themselves and not a part of a
Yes.
monolith. And I don't know, do you want to unpack that? Like you feeling allowed to be yourself and not a part of a monolith? Like did you feel that way in China
Oh my
and abroad?
gosh. It's like so profound how you just when I say came out of my shell, I mean like I was rebirthed when
Ooh,
I actually started traveling, and like especially solo traveling. I found I had to like destroy who I was, which this happened in the span of like 3 months, but it really was like I had to destroy who I was and the concepts that I formed here that were so often as Black women, we're limited here. We are limited, whether that's don't be too emotional because you'll be shown as aggressive. Don't be too forthcoming because then people are, like there's all these things that we need to be stuck in this box. And when I traveled and when I truly got to be myself, even though I felt like I was being someone different, it was who I was meant to be. And I found that while I was abroad. And I think that it truly allowed me to really have that don't listen to what they say. I have a tattoo of it actually. It's Chinese. It says don't listen to what they say, go see, which means "听为虚言真为实." And it means don't listen to what they say, go see for yourself. And I have carried that literally. You see it's tattooed on my body. I have carried that with me since China because that whole like box that we always feel like we have to box ourselves into, especially in the States, it crumpled when I left the United States. It was insane. And it's just been this profound thing that I am constantly discovering and constantly reforming myself because I have to, when I go abroad, I have to unlearn the things that I do when I come back and the same type of thing. So, yes,
Oh God. So it's this process of for you like learning and it's a process. Okay. No, I definitely
a
I
process.
understand that, and I think that I love the fact that you were able to go from this like PWI high school where I can only imagine the
Oh
feelings
my
around
gosh.
blackness, who am I, femininity, if I say something, am I too angry? If I'm introverted, am I
Even just being
cold?
beautiful.
Oh, don't even get on that.
I didn't know it was beautiful. Yeah, like it was everything. I had no idea. I was like, damn, I'm really
Don't even
ugly.
get on that
Oh,
topic because that one is rooted in our history. Especially in
yes,
America. Like I hate to say this, but like the slave history affects how we're seen
yes,
all the
it
time.
does.
It really does, and it affects how we're seen. And even me, as someone who my family's from the Caribbean, like so
Hmm.
not even really familiar with the African American context for years and years and years, I immediately, being the first generation American in my family, realized it's definitely unique to be Black and raised in America. Like, that is a very unique
Yes.
situation. And oftentimes, I would always see growing up, so I was also raised in New York to add some
Hmm.
nuance to it. I would also see, well, there's one way to look, there's one way to speak, there's one way to be. And if you're outside of that, if you're even a little bit on the margins, and even in the PWI spaces, they expect you to be this one caricature person.
Yes, you
And
can't be yourself.
they cannot hold your complexity. And I've heard so many stories
Mm-mm.
like what you're talking about today about like going abroad and people actually not like, oh, what are all Black people? I'm not the representative for the whole
Yes,
community, but what is Imani's story? Like, how did you get
yes,
here? And I think that that is probably what allowed you to develop that sense of self because you were no
it
longer,
is because
yeah,
their stories matter.
mm,
It's not just
out,
at face value. Stories, your story matters, and people want to know it.
yeah. I think I might be wrong about this because I've never really I've never been to Asia, so that's like a whole nother thing.
Hmm.
But I might be wrong about this, but I feel like that on a whole certain other cultures have more of an emphasis on reflection than America. So while we
Oh my
naturally rush
gosh.
to like align someone with a stereotype, they might be more willing to unpack that person's identity and actually sit with them and hold space with them. And I think that's also a good cultural context because it definitely is hard out here. And then imagine how many like
Yeah,
young Black women go their entire life believing that how they're treated here is how they're going to be treated
is
in the
how it
entire
is
world.
everywhere. Yes, and that's the extent to which you will be treated forever. I mean, like Asia, just not even just Asia in general, so many other countries in the world are focused on collectivism and not individualism, and that has thoroughly changed the way that we look at the world. I mean, being in Asia where people are more interested in you than they are in themselves, compared to here where it's like, how can I be better? How can I make more money? How can I? Instead of how can we? And that collectivist culture is something that truly just makes you feel like you fit into more spaces and that you're invited into more spaces. And when you feel welcomed off rip, like immediately, you just feel so much more. not even pressure, but you feel so much more like you're so much more likely to be yourself. Um, and that ability to be yourself allows you to reflect on the change that you're, coming from in terms of that individualistic to collectivist, just environment. Like it's an environment. Even when I'd eat in Thailand, China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, it's not a common thing to just kind of like order your own dish. It's a You order this dish, it's a huge portion because it's meant to be shared with like six different people, like your family or like your friends. And just that type of thinking is so like it's a big change from what you're used to. And it changes a lot of the ways that you think.
Yeah. Dang. I mean, shoot, I think of this podcast and I'm like, this podcast is changing people's lives one episode at a time because I was talking to another
It
guest
has
on
to
the
be.
podcast and she talked about her experiences in China as well. And I remember I'm sitting down with her and I remember thinking to myself that there are so many people who have been conditioned to see traveling as fear. And if we go with something
Yes.
that is fearful, and if we go back to our history as well as African people, especially of the diaspora,
Mm-hmm.
our first travel, we were in chains, right? Our
And
ancestors
it
were
was against our will.
yeah, and against our
Definitely.
will. And I think that in black families there's this thing of like, what do you mean live abroad? Huh? You know, it's not safe
Yes.
out there. Like it's not or I don't want to see you end up like this random person who ended up getting killed
Yes.
at
Oh
this,
my gosh. She
at
got
this
kidnapped in Colombia. That's gonna be you.
event.
Girl, I'm going to Cuba. Like, no, that fear is so deeply ingrained, and that's definitely something that I try and just not even just mitigate, but also just kind of educate because
Mm,
the biggest thing that I find in the Black community, unfortunately, is that fear. It's now ingrained in ignorance. Unfortunately, like a lot of it is ingrained in ignorance. So, for example, when I first decided that I wanted to go to China, I was allowed to graduate early. And I told my mom. My mom has always been supportive because she has traveled, like, she's been to India, she's been to so many other countries in the world, like, not just like Jamaica, where she's from.
mm.
She's traveled far and wide. And I told my aunt, who is scared to go any longer than 2 hours on a flight. And she was like, "You're going to go to China? They don't like us over there. They're racist. Like, all of the very stereotypical things that someone can say. It was just thrown at me. And I was like, not only was I angered because I'm like, you can't even sit on a flight for 2 hours. Why would I listen to you? But
Right?
also, how do you know what you're talking about? I'm serious. Like it angered. I was 17, angry with a grown woman because she had said something about people that I had never met, a country that I had never been to. But like, how do you have all these preconceived notions when you haven't even brought yourself to do research? One, go to, or even encourage others to explore that unknown. And so a lot of the times, people aren't willing to even do the research, go or just even think about it. And I think that that's a lot of the times where we fall short.
Yeah, but I wanna bring that back to the individualism, collectivism thing you talked about before.
Yeah,
So, because we're so individualistic, it's like if I go
yeah,
abroad as a black person, I'm going to experience the same oppression that I experience here, not
mm,
realizing that a huge part of that
mm,
oppression is rooted in competition, right? In a
yes,
society where people aren't necessarily trying to compete, your well-being might be a bit better, even as a
yes,
person who's a racial minority. And I think that it's one of those things that I swing back and forth with because, like you, my family's Jamaican, and I remember when I said I wanted to
very,
travel, yeah,
yes,
and it was like they don't like us over there, and I love my
mm,
family, but I just got to keep it real. It was an energy of they don't like us over there, and I
yes,
remember I talked to people even from other cultures. I spoke to this Nepali woman, and she
mm-hmm,
talked about how when she went to Japan, it's gonna be an episode on the podcast. When she went to Japan, her family was like, "Are you bringing a man with you?" And I feel like that's very similar energy. I think I see a lot
yes,
of like black people and black families have like, oh, when you get married. We're
Yep.
cool with that, but as a single woman, we're not cool. We're not cool with that because they don't like us
Nope.
over there. And I got all these stories and news clippings of what happened to this person and that person. And I think that, like I said, our ancestors' first trip abroad was in chains. And I feel like
Yes.
now that that hits me, I'm like, oh snap! Like that's why we think the way we do about travel. It's rooted in
Yes.
fear for us. It's rooted in loss and death.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's there's a lot of negative connotations with it, definitely, and I think that that's one of the biggest things that we in the community and as a community need to work through.
Mm,
And I think the only way to do that is together.
yeah,
If
yeah,
everyone has these preconceived notions of, or not even notions, the belief that travel is still associated with that fear, one, and two, the belief that the same racism, the same discrimination, the same oppression you face in the United States is what you're going to face around the world. We're not going to get out of that fear. We're going to use it to constantly keep us trapped here because that's what we are. If you really think about it, like, I mean, Black women have this high mortality rate when it comes to birth. We can't even have kids, we can't even continue our lineage safely. I mean, all the gun violence, the racial violence, all of those things, we're so used to them here, but when we go abroad, it's like those things don't even exist because it's not common everywhere else. Like when I was in Thailand, it was actually something that shocked me and something that shocked Thailand as a nation because there was one um, instance of gun violence in a school. It was one school shooting that had happened, I think it was like 30 years. And it rocked the nation. They were like, oh my gosh, not us looking like America. We can't even keep our kids safe. And they acted immediately. Guns aren't even like a thing in Thailand. So it's just kind of why do we expect, or not why do we expect those same things? Expecting those same things, those same principles in the United States to fly abroad is not the same thing. And no one, if we don't go, we're not going to unlearn that.
yeah. And I think what you learned is something so powerful that I think more people should learn, which is that America, while great, is not the standard. I'm
It's
surprised
not.
Thailand doesn't even have guns. I mean, wow, because I mean, the Second Amendment is like law here. Like it is
Yes.
how people operate, right? So I
Hmm.
we begin to realize, and what I'm realizing now in this conversation is American society is rooted in fear and scarcity. So
Yes, it is.
other nations see that. I'm surprised. Like one school shooting in 30 years. I wish we had that. Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
scared to turn on the TV because I always feel like there's something, especially as someone who was in college, just came out of college. There was always some like, oh, active shooter on a campus, da da da, and it's anxiety
Notifications.
inducing. Especially during finals week, I'd be like, oh my god,
Yeah.
like let me just hurry up and make sure that I am out, but like not after a certain time because I would be, how would I say this? I knew my school was a high pressure environment. And
Yes.
I was there thinking, God, don't make anything happen. And
Please, God.
I hate that I was
Protect me,
like,
Lord.
no, I hate that my mind went that I hate that my mind went there. I hate that my mental went there. But I knew
Hmm.
people had depression. I knew it was a high stress time. I was like,
Hmm.
oh God. But to know that in Thailand, like that only happened once in 30 years. That is a huge
Yes.
blessing. And that's what I want for America. But can we get there if our mindset is rooted in fear, if it's rooted in scarcity, if it's rooted in if these people succeed, I can't. If this black person is on top, I can't be on top, like crabs in the barrel within our own community. There's a lot of things that I think we need to heal. So I love this conversation. Oh my god, I love this conversation.
Me too.
Yeah, no,
I
'cause
mean, yeah, it is even about that individualist. Just like you said, why can't America? America is too focused on what I want. I want guns. I want to have the freedom of speech. I want to have the freedom to choose what I want. I want the freedom to do this. Meanwhile, in all these other, in most, a lot of other countries, it's how can we make this better?
yeah,
What can we do to protect?
collective action.
And that's why those simple things that not even everyone wants, but that a majority wants, don't fly.
Ooh, ouch.
It's collective.
I'm just gonna go straight for it and ask this next question. Real, like off the cuff. What do you say to the people who say, I don't have enough money to travel. What is your
Oh my
response to
gosh.
that? Yeah, because I hear that a lot, and then again, I grew up around that type of mindset. Not necessarily my
Yes.
immediate family, but I would hear like, I don't have the money to travel. What do you say to
Yes.
people like that? Or all I know is this neighborhood. I don't have the money. I'm not gonna even try.
So let me start. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in New York, New York. I grew up in the suburbs.
Do you see yourself living there for the rest of your life?
No.
Okay, so that means that you need to get out of there. And one of the things I see is that some people will say, "Yeah, I definitely see myself living out there." To that instance, I say you need to get on your laptop and really see. Do you even is the ocean near you? Like, is the ocean blue near you or is it brown?
Nah, I'm in New York, so it's green.
Ooh, that's nasty. That sounds like algae and spring water. I don't know.
Yeah. It's greenish blue out here, especially now at this time of
mm,
year. Yeah.
okay. Well, we need to get you some turquoise blue water. But two, a lot of people say that. A lot of people say that, and that means that you haven't done your research. Because one of the biggest things I'd say is there's so many places out there, and you need to be able to do your research. I mean, if you don't even want to do your research, all you have to do is think about something that you want. I think the biggest thing that people do is maybe create a bucket list, and they'll start huge on this bucket list, right? They'll start, I want to go to Ibiza, I want to go to Dubai. Let's start off small
Mm.
and let's do something where it's like, for example, I went to Colombia for my flight and hotel were $430. And that's a budget.
Oh,
Because if you think about it, I mean, it depends on what you want. That's the biggest thing because people will say they want to travel, but they'll be out at the club every single weekend, spending $200 on a bottle, and that is a flight to Paris. I spent $250 on a flight to Paris last year, round trip. Um, so it's your priority. If you want to get out there, if you want to get out for you, if you wanted to get out of New York, this was a theoretical, but if you wanted to get out of New York, are you willing to sacrifice 4 weekends at the club for, to save up $800 that you can take to go on a trip to Colombia, but you need to like give up for a moment to explore something new? And a lot of people will say no. A lot of people are so ingrained in doing something that is fun for them now that they won't open the door to new opportunities later. And if your need to explore different things and see the world is stronger than your need to do things you've already done, make sure you got a passport.
not an active one.
What?
Yeah, I mean, mine expired, but I'm supposed to get a new one this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I like the sound of that. All right. That's a good track. Yes. I mean, yeah, passport is a big step. Did you know so many Americans don't have passports? I think it was like a high
I was
number.
gonna talk about that, and it's almost like how to say this? It's almost like we're landlocked, almost. Like
Yes.
we feel, it's America the Beautiful. American society develops a heavy sense of nationalism in
Oh my gosh.
children who become adults with a heavy sense of patriotism, and that there's nothing wrong with
Mm-hmm.
that. But I do think that the landlocked identity. I mean, God, there are people who haven't even left their state. I remember when I went to college, there were people who were like, man, a lot of people don't even make it out of Wyoming. It's like, oh, snap.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even make it out of Wyoming. And there's states around Wyoming, and there's a whole 50 states. But if you would talk to the average person who's lived in the US, have they even traveled to every single state? No. And this
No.
country in itself, I always say, like, I want to go on a road trip around America because this country in itself has so much beauty and diversity that I think isn't
Yes.
even acknowledged by most people.
Mm-mm.
So if we don't even acknowledge our own country with so much beauty, diversity, opportunity, what makes us think we're gonna hop on flights and go abroad? And we're just landlocked here. Like that's
You're bringing up a very good point. And I think I'll actually have to disagree with you about it's not a problem. It is a problem
ooh, okay.
because
Mm.
traveling has shown me that it's a problem. Number one, Americans, the hardest pill for me to swallow was when I traveled abroad and I learned not to boast that I'm American.
Oh
I wouldn't do that because I always say I'm Jamaican American. And I mostly say I'm Jamaican because when you go abroad, there are a couple things that people automatically assume. in a lot of scenarios. I wouldn't say Europe, but most other like regions of the world. If you say I'm from the United States, they'll be like, "Oh, you have money, girl." No, I'm broke. I'm a college student on a college budget. That's a big thing. I will not say I'm from the United States. I will say I'm Jamaican, and that's one because if I'm trying to haggle and I say I'm from the United States, they're going to charge me 10 times what they would. But other than that, you get humbled. You really get humbled because Americans abroad are known to be loud. We're known to dress in a very American-y way.
Oops,
We're
oops,
known
oops.
to. It is embarrassing. Okay, they know what we look like.
Oh yeah, they know what we
Another
look
big.
like.
They know. I'll be like, hello. First of all, I'm trying to speak your language here. Please don't assume, even though I do speak English. But a big thing is that we are we're not even in tune with our own country. And where Greenland and Iceland were, I couldn't tell you. I would not have been able to tell you. And I was never really a good geography person, but I went abroad and people were like, "Oh, I'm from Germany," and I was like, "Oh, is that next to Spain?" And they were like, "No." "Oh, I forgot you're American." Respectfully, what do you mean by that? People know that Americans just don't take the care for the outside quotation outside world. We can't even learn the capitals of these countries. We don't even know the relative. Some people don't even know like that Africa's a continent. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to Africa." What country? And it's a lot of those types of things where it's like that patriotism, because we box ourselves in so much, we're so ingrained in the United States,
Mm,
can be a negative for us. And
yeah.
it's a big thing.
Everything that you said, great, but I feel like you said something that I really want to just emphasize on the podcast. You said
Yeah.
that money reveals our priorities, and it does. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
people who say that they can't travel, they practice logomania. They're wearing all these
Yes.
clothes. I mean,
All the
God, they
designer.
have credit at all of the major retailers, but they can't
Mm-hmm.
travel. And I think that's a thing that I think about all the time. So I studied economics in college, but yeah, it taught me
Yes.
a little bit about money. And it taught me that money is really a reflection of our values. How we spend it, how
Mm-hmm.
we see it is a reflection of our value. We talked a little bit about scarcity
Yes.
and abundance, but it goes beyond that. Like there are some people, I'll talk to them and I'll be like, hey, well, invest some money into a side hustle, invest some money into something for yourself, whether that's traveling, whether that's self-care. Oh, they can't do that. But like you said, they can be at the club, they can buy the most expensive drinks, they can wear the most expensive clothes. So I think because we live in like a social media digital gratification age,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to talk about this too. People even treat travel as a luxury commodity
Yes.
instead of something of like, I'm going to learn the culture, I'm going to learn about people. So I really think
Mm-hmm.
how we see money, how we prioritize it as well, colors our experiences. A lot of the people who are saying, I can't travel, is because when they go traveling, they want to go to the top hotels, they want to eat at the best restaurants, they want the it girl or the it
Mm-hmm.
guy TikTok feed. There, it's almost like a humble traveling trip on Spirit Airlines or like,
Yes.
something that is more, you're sitting with the local people. That's not what people want. Do you see
Yes.
that too, like travel as a commodity rather than like cultural excursion?
That's actually one of the other things that I'd say really is difficult with my business. It's difficult because so many people, especially in I'm just going to talk about the Black community. In a way, you know how white people see Black culture as this, like, they're culture vultures, right?
Mm,
They want to take everything that we have. They want to listen to our music. They want to drink our drinks. They want to dress like us. But when it really comes down to learning about us, they are nowhere to be found.
oh,
That is what we are like when we travel. And it's really, when you look at it that way, you're just kind of like, dang, like that's not who I want to be. And that's the way so many people look at it. Like in my business, I don't book, like if people want to go just to like Mexico or just to Jamaica or the Bahamas just to stay in a resort, I'm not going to want to work with you. And I'm not going to work with you because where do you get the culture, the language learning? Where do you get the new experiences and the shared experiences with people that you've never met before? You don't. Unless it's the people that work at the hotel, and a lot of people don't really interact with them, unfortunately. And they don't hear about those stories. For example, in Egypt, I went to this very, very touristy place with my mom. I brought her for Mother's Day, and we were talking. We were the only Black people in this really, really nice resort. It's called the um, Scheigenberger Scheigenberger Alcazar, like a very, very nice, all-inclusive resort, all Europeans, but on like the Red Sea in Egypt. We were the only Black people. We were very uncomfortable, yet we made like friends with one of the people who was our like butler, because each room had a butler. And he was just like, it's very difficult working here. I only get to see my family like once every 3 months, and it's hard because the people don't respect us. Even though they're in our country, they don't respect us. They don't want to know our stories. We're just here to serve them. And I was like, do people realize that this is how a lot of us are seen, especially as already minoritized individuals? So it's like luxury. That luxury travel in the Black community is really detrimental because we're doing to them what it feels like white people do to us. I think even the biggest thing when we look at travel in a way that is that culturally like that cultural dive where you're getting to talk to the locals, you're really getting those experiences. We think about like white backpackers staying in hostels. And as soon as you hear hostel, God forbid, the movie Hostel comes up, they think you're going to get kidnapped. They're like, you're sharing a bunk bed. Do you have to share a bathroom? People don't know that hostels are literally, there are hostels out there that are just like hotels, except you get that hostel community. But again, we're not even willing to do that research.
We're not willing to do that research. And I do think that the way that hostels are depicted in the United States reminds people of homeless shelters. So
Yes.
that in itself is a problem, but not, I feel like you were preaching a whole word with the doing to others what was done to us. And this is my
Mm-hmm.
problem with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Black girl luxury movement. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yes, I am.
I'm familiar with it, and as much as I love to see Black women thriving
Mm-hmm.
and
I love the
and
thrive.
going and achieving and accomplishing, and striving, I can't help but think that our obsession with luxury is kind of the way in which we try to cosplay whiteness. And
Yes.
it also, how would I say this? It also impacts travel because, like you said, you look at a person with your skin tone, but because you're paying for
Mm-hmm.
the room, because you're the one who has the Amex, because you're the one who's from America, automatically they're your slave. And that's
Yes.
sad and sick. But what do you think of that? Am I right with that? With that luxury affecting how we operate?
So I think it's pretty like, I think it's difficult because on one hand, I don't see it as like luxury is reserved for white people, not for the white man, for white people. But the way that we look to attain it is that standard that has been put in place there
Yeah.
because it's what's known. But even if you look back to like a lot of countries in Africa where royalty has always been there, we don't know that history.
Mm,
We were never taught that. So that kind of pedestal is reserved for the white people, and that's what we look up to. That's what we achieve to and strive for.
yeah.
And I think that in a way, materialism is has always been rooted in something that we don't need, I guess. Not even not we don't need. It's evil to me. I think materialism is evil. That's just for me. I just personally think it's evil because we regard things more important than experiences.
Mm,
And I think that it just makes this cycle of I need more. And always like that overindulgence, that gluttony, and it takes over. Like it's crazy. The gluttony of wanting to have allows us in the United States and other countries in the world, but it allows us to work for someone something that we don't have a passion for just because we need a paycheck for most of our lives. We get to 50, 60, and we're like, you know what? It's my time to live now. You got arthritis and a bad hip. What you living? What you gonna do? You gonna go right to that resort in Jamaica if you can make it on that flight, or you're gonna go to a retirement home in Florida.
Uh,
And it's like we've been so, I wouldn't say brainwashed, but we've been
yeah.
so brainwashed to think that that is reality. And when you travel, you see that people who have nothing are living leagues better, happier, and more fruitfully than we are here, even though we got more money.
You're touching okay, so y'all know that this podcast is called The Purposeful Professional. So yeah, you're touching on what my work is about. For us to
Mm-hmm.
begin to realize that there's different ways that we can see work and labor. And yes, going abroad can also expand that viewpoint as well. You're speaking facts. I just want to first and foremost put that out there because honestly, why, if the average lifespan is, let's say, 78, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you waiting until you're 60 to live? You're like essentially, if we like to look, okay, so in this culture we like to look at numbers, right? So if the average lifespan is 78,
Mm-hmm.
essentially at your 60s you almost on your way out, right? So why are you waiting at that time to live? And for me, I would, I've heard passion being demonized. I've heard many different things, and I do see where people say that, passion can't pay the bills. Okay, but I always say to everyone, get your strategy together. What is your dream life?
Yes.
Get your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Get your plan. You might have to, for a while, work in a job that you don't necessarily like. You might have to live in an
Yes.
area that you don't necessarily like. We're grown and we have obligations and we have
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities, but what's your plan? And I think over time, being within certain systems and ways of thinking will make you think, okay, let me stay here until I become old enough to now start to think of something else. And by the time you reach that age, you're so locked into your pattern. You're so
Yes.
locked into the status quo that you can't
Mm-hmm.
see anything out of it. And I would
No.
love to say that a big house and a nice car and a fat check makes you happy, but it really doesn't. And I think that other cultures understand that a bit better than we do.
Yes.
And I guess you could say like the chronic rate of depression, a large part of
Oh
that
my
is because we're
gosh.
forcing ourselves into
Yes.
a box that you talked about it earlier. I mean, you've been preaching this whole podcast to me and to the
Mm-hmm.
listeners. We're forcing ourselves in a box that wasn't meant for us. So for me,
Yep.
I grew up, just kind of going a little bit into my story, I was always interested in business and leadership, etc. But I would do these
Mm-hmm.
internships in college and I'd be like, man, something is just not connecting. And it got to a point where I kept on trying to like apply for jobs after school and like things kept on falling through. And I'm like, dang, like what's
Yes.
going on? But I began to realize as a spiritual person, I'm also Caribbean, Jamaican parents. So I'm real spiritual like that. I
Yes.
began to realize, is this what God wants for me? And then I started asking him, like, what do you want for me? And then I began to realize, well, I can be a boss, I can be
Mm-hmm.
organized, I can be professional, I can be all of those things and still be an entrepreneur.
You are
You
preaching right
know,
now. You are preaching to the choir.
no, it's facts though. And I think we have to, it's because we're so tethered to like our identity existing within a system. And
Yes.
and that's why I wanted you on this podcast because I feel like from the moment I met you, I was like, unapologetic energy. That is what you
Mm-hmm.
embody. You're living life on your own terms. You're super young doing it. And I was like, man, I got to have her. Sometimes I feel like I'm a salesperson always trying to do my little pitch. But I was
Listen,
like,
pitch it all. I'm glad I'm
no,
here.
I
You
was
got
like,
me here.
I got to have her on this because like your spirit and your energy is different. And when I see people like that, I'm like, man, I want to be around them because that's where I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be where
Yeah.
like just my energy alone helps people to
Mm-hmm.
realize whatever space you're in or wherever you occupy, you should be there. Like, don't doubt yourself, especially if you're doing a path that like society might say isn't as acceptable. Don't doubt
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, I would love to see more people going down the path of their passion, even if their
Mm-hmm.
passion is not something that they're naturally good at. And I,
Yes.
because I see so many, I think in our community as well, there's so many people that I'm like, wow, you love science. You're always watching the science channel. And then they'll tell me,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, I got a D in science growing up. Well, you got a passion for this. So if you don't work on
Yes.
your weak points and go back into this field and change this whole field, like, I hate how, like I said, this external emphasis on identity makes us define ourselves by grades, by job
Yes.
offers, by income, and that limits our mind. So how can we travel and we've been weighed down by a GPA since we were young? We've been weighed down by being black or being a minority. We've been weighed down by being a woman. We've been weighed down by all of these identity-based metrics, by our wealth and
Yes.
status. How can I even imagine a life outside of what I know when this whole life is
You
weighted me down?
can't.
Yeah.
You can't. It's it's really difficult. Fear, again, we go back to, it's a lot of it is rooted in fear, especially when that fear lies in, I haven't seen anyone do this successfully or even pursue it. And how do I know? Or I have like, for one of my friends, for example, like she is this beacon of light for me because she has family, so she has younger siblings that like depend on her. Her parents are in a difficult situation, and she is just constantly working and going to school so that she can be better for them, and she's putting her life aside because she has that duty. And for me, my brother is what, 340 days younger than me, so he's fine. He can do what he needs to do. You know, I don't have to raise him. My mother owns her own business, so she was an example for me. And I just have this, I don't have anything pulling me in either direction, so I can move in my own direction, and a lot of people don't have that opportunity.
Mm,
And I can say also that not having an example is difficult. I mean, for me, there's no one. My mom has been an example, of like going on her own path, and I think that a lot of the times we don't see the examples of the negatives of it. You know, we see you've worked and you've made it, right? But do you see the hardships? Do you see the failed attempts? Do you see the struggles? Do you see the places where you didn't know if you could pay rent? Me, for example, I was doubt. You were talking about doubt. I have been in doubt. I just lost one of my incomes, and it was really difficult because I'm like, I felt like I was on the right path, and now I've been redirected again. But that's all it is. It's a redirection because not only is God gonna get me through, but I'm gonna get me through. Because one thing I learned, when you pursue your own path, yes, you may fail, but you have small wins that continue to prove to you that you can do it. You can pursue this passion. You can pursue a passion that pays. Yes, it might not work out on one path, but there's so many other ones that you can't even see.
yeah.
And so I think that's a big
Yeah.
thing. Just like the community you're talking about. I mean, just talking about those stories is really important because we all see the goal, or we all see when we arrive at the goal, but no one sees the path. And to be able to see and have that transparent path is something that I really try to do, not only on all of my platforms, but also just in my life. If you're not being authentic, what
Yeah.
are you?
Oh, let me tell you, you know what I've been through. Podcast people, I'm gonna talk to you about what I went through. Imani knows. So my nonprofit program, I had to cancel it. I'm not, the organization is still here. We're pivoting. We're doing it for professionals now, but I had to cancel it. And I got an email from someone like lashing out at me about, oh well, I feel embarrassed that it's canceled. And I was like, whoa, I don't know what to tell
What?
you. I don't know what to tell you because it's like, y'all don't think I feel embarrassed. I'm like, and some people reached out to me and they were like, um, I like the humility that you show in your leadership,
Mm-hmm.
that you're
It's
able to
difficult.
actually say, hey, this didn't work in front of all these
Yeah.
people and not feel this type of way. But I always thought when I started entrepreneurship at 21, I wasn't going to do things like the 50-year-old white man. I'm
No.
not.
Set the new
And
standard.
if people can't take the transparency and the honesty, then they're not my people. And
No.
I'm not saying like put your whole business out there as a founder.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, some things you got to kind of keep to yourself. You got to kind of have a little bit of pride to you. But I will
Yes.
say, realizing you have to pivot is not a bad thing. That's what I realized. I was
No.
like, hey, I got to pivot. Either I'm going to pivot or we're not going to survive. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that everyone is not necessarily a founder, so everyone doesn't understand that experience. I've been a part of
Yes.
organizations that have had to shut down, that have had to pivot, and I've always been kind, compassionate in the process because
Mm-hmm.
we in the birthing season of like birthing a new idea, it takes work. And
It
sometimes we
takes work.
don't, we get it wrong at first, but we can analyze it and be like, hey, this was good, that was not as good, let me come back stronger. So because I got
Yes.
to a point in my life where I no longer failed, I no longer failed, not no longer failed, I no longer feared failure or humiliation. I was able to send the
Hmm.
email that I sent. But even as it came from me, there were still some people that their association with me, quote unquote association, because I don't know where they think that they're closely associated to me, because I think that I pretty much take responsibility myself. But their association with me made them feel angry because they're like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't know what to say because I'm not a part of that leadership class of I need to save face.
Hmm.
That's not the spirit that I have. Granted that I try to
No.
keep everything with the spirit of grace and class, and I try to really go with a spirit of respect for everyone. At the same time, I understand this is my journey. I'm 22 years old.
Yes.
There's people 50, 60, 70 plus failing too. We're all in this together. It's cool.
Yes, we are.
And it's not failure if you pivot. It's a new direction. It's a new purpose. It's new opportunities. And I think that that's something that I when you talked about the struggles, I'm like, yeah, people don't see the struggles. People always think that it's always perfect and it's always going to go well.
Yes.
But there are struggles on an entrepreneurial path. There are struggles on a non-traditional path. I mean, any
Yep.
artist that I know of has faced a lot of rejection, has faced flopped albums, flopped singles. You have to be in certain industries, you have to have thick skin and be tough enough to take
Resilience. You
it.
have to be
Yeah,
resilient.
to take the heat.
Persevere.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when you make certain decisions, people are going to be mad. People are going to be
Hmm.
disappointed, but come back stronger every single time. Be so good that they can't deny you. And I think that's
Yes.
what I want for us. Learn from your missteps, not even a failure. You're learning. You actually took the risk.
Hmm.
Learn from that and come back stronger. But like you said, when we don't have that example, goes back to fear. I literally know people who are afraid to start a side hustle. They're afraid
Yes.
to go out there and start a travel business. I know a lot of people who could be doing what you're doing, but
Hmm.
it's like that's not cool, that's not acceptable, that's not my degree. The list goes down of the like that's not. And I'm like, wow, well, there's a whole world out there. And then we talk about people like our society loves to talk about like the Jeff Bezos of the world and the Oprahs of the world and like these big shot people. They took
Yes.
big risk. And I
Yes, they
think
did.
people don't understand, like, to get to their level, they, of course, they had great ideas. Of course, Oprah is a brilliant journalist and she's super talented and she had great ideas, but she took big risk to get to where
Hmm.
she's at. And I think beyond the conversation on travel, today we're just talking about taking that risk, taking that leap, trying something new,
Taking that
and
risk.
opening yourself up to something, that you never tried before.
There's this book that I've been reading that I've been meaning to finish. It's called Atomic Habits, and it talks about. I need to find out exactly what it is, but basically, it's planning versus action. And so many of us will plan. We will create the game plan. We will think, oh, it's called being in motion versus taking action. And so many of us will feel like we're making progress because we're doing all the planning. We're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Yet, we're not actually taking the first step to put those I's and T's on paper. Like, we're not actually doing anything that pushes us farther. We're just preparing, which is a form of procrastination, which basically happens because of our own fear. And the people that are successful and the people that are happy and do find that happiness are the people that take that action. And it's a huge thing that it talks about. Like, it's really crazy because people will outline a whole business plan, but they'll never put that plan into action. They'll never reach out to someone to say, hey, I have this idea for a business. How can we work together on it? Or do you have any pointers on how I can make it better? Or they'll say, I really need to work out, but they're not even going to go and like lay out their, what's it called? Their, Gymshark or whatever outfit. Like, there's so many things that all we have to do is take the one step, and we can't even do that.
It's, yeah, I, yeah, that's That's facts. That's totally, totally 100% facts. And I think that I feel like in the history of anything that I've known that has been successful, they've had to pivot. Because I always
Hmm.
say there's theory and there's practice. There's how I see things in my mind, and then there's the actual reality. I'll never know unless I merge both worlds. I have to take what's in my mind and put it out in the real world. As hard as that can be, I have to do some form of testing. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of the time we see action as testing. And sometimes people will they will say like, oh well, this founder, this entrepreneur is chaotic, but I always say like, I want to bet on the entrepreneur, the founder, the artist, the human that will go out there and potentially make a fool of themselves, because I
Yes.
have to know that you value action just as much as you value analysis. And I think that there are very few people that bridge that balance between action and analysis. I'll see people who are either really impulsive,
Hmm.
but then
Me.
again, those people will sometimes be wildly successful just off of like iteration, versus the
Yes.
person who thinks, drafts the whole plan, starts it, and then it's like,
Hmm.
well, there are people already doing what you're doing who know more because they've been doing it for longer. So I've also learned
Yes.
in my entrepreneurial journey, persistence is key. And
Persistence and
yeah,
consistency.
absolutely. Mm, absolutely.
It's you never like consistency quality the book again, this book is amazing. If you haven't read Atomic Habits, you have to read it. It's
I read it.
not even life changing. Is you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know about the when it was basically it made us rethink how we usually think of quality over quantity, but with creating a habit, and what it is it's not even creating a habit, it's creating who you want to be through changing your habits and through changing the perception of who you see yourself to be in the future. Basically, it's consistency. It's that quantity over quality, because you can be like say I want to start my own nonprofit, right? So I'm going to like I'm going to create a board, I'm going to talk to my board, and we're going to discuss how we can draft up or like create a nonprofit, and we're going to do that like once, and do it really well, and then we just don't touch on it again for months, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what, let me go back, I have that spark of energy again. But that's like what, a year and a half later, instead of consistently trying to reiterate and build upon that draft of your nonprofit every month. Like, it's really huge, the consistency, and I think that we don't take consistency as seriously as we need to.
It's this thing of like, so there's this thing that they say in business, and that they call it move fast and break things. I I wouldn't say that being irresponsible is good, but I would
Mm-hmm.
say at the beginning you got to realize you're going to break some things. That strategic plan is going to change. It's going to look different. The
Yes, it is.
mission might be narrowed a bit, or it might become broader. Programs will look very different. You'll learn a little bit more about your leadership style and who you work well
Mm-hmm.
with.
Yes.
You might realize that some board members don't fit, right? Or they don't
Yes.
they don't align, so they might depart. It's very different. Like I listened to this one girl who that's why I'm building this entrepreneur support group, because I'm like, damn, like we need to
Mm-hmm.
have these stories. She went
Period.
through
We need
four
it.
she went through four co-founders. I'm here thinking like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking that I'm going through a lot. Whoa.
Oh my
She went through
gosh.
four
Four?
co-founders. All four left. And the reason why they left is because now she's at like 300K yearly revenue, or like monthly revenue, which to me is like nuts. I think
That's
monthly.
good.
But there was a lot of there were failed businesses. There were failed businesses. There were failed co-founder relationships. The co-founders left when things got tough, but she continuously tried. And I think we have to begin to say, as a society, not sure how it is abroad, but that failure is not even really a failure. You tried.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're doing something new, which, let's keep, most entrepreneurs, creators, whatever, are doing things that are new. This never been done
Yes.
before. So give yourself the grace. And I think that that's what I've had to learn in
Yes.
my own life, to give myself grace as a former high school straight A student, all that other stuff. I had to learn how to give myself grace. I had to learn how to let myself be myself. And I think
Yes.
sometimes I'm impulsive. Yeah. Sometimes I make the wrong decision. Yeah. But I would say I always keep my eye on the prize. We're moving forward regardless. And
Yes.
because I have that mindset of like, every misstep, I'm gonna keep on moving forward. I'm gonna keep on moving forward. And one day I'm gonna
Hmm.
get to where I wanna be. These things take time. And I think a couple people that I always am like, you sure you want to do entrepreneurship? When I see the perfectionism, I'm like, all right, y'all, are you sure you want to do entrepreneurship?
Oh my
Because you want the
gosh.
process to be perfect, number one. You want
Hmm.
the product to be perfect, number one. And then you are in analysis paralysis and you don't really want to
Yes.
test. That's an issue that I had as well, where um oftentimes when I was in entrepreneurial spaces prior to starting identity, it would always be like we would argue about the color of the product, right?
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, we're arguing about the color. Why not just put different colors out there and test? Test two colors, right? See which one works.
Yes.
We're arguing about the font for the brand. A brand can have a primary font and a sub font. And if we realize that the sub fonts post perform better, we'll just move the sub font to the primary. I'm big on testing because I feel like
Hmm.
I can sit down and analyze all day, but at the same time, I you have to bring your ideas to reality. It's like
And put something out there.
the law of gravitational
Hmm.
of gravitational force. Like everything has to come down to earth. And I think a lot of
Yes.
people have to realize your idea, if it's good, deserves to touch earth, even if it explodes. Let it touch earth, test it out, try it. Like Amazon started off as a bookstore. Look at Amazon today.
Hmm.
Netflix was struggling against Blockbuster, but they pivoted, right? They pivoted into what they do today. Netflix today is the biggest streaming company in the world. Like you have to start something. And I feel like a lot of people just don't. Today we're talking about unapologetic energy. You have to start something, and like if you fail, hey, let's go to dinner. Forget about it for a while. Come back to the table on Monday morning. What's new?
Redirect.
What can I change?
Yes.
Where did I go wrong? But even then, what was good? Celebrate your wins.
Hmm.
Because I don't see one entrepreneur that like has failed at everything. Even if
Yes.
you've built a great organization, that's a win. I mean, that's a win. Like even if you have great marketing, that's a win. Like
Yes.
look at your strengths, celebrate your wins, and then come
Hmm.
back and say, how can I pivot and become stronger and become stronger? And you know what's funny? After Identity's program, I closed down the
Yeah.
program. I just got so many emails of like, Soraya, I know you're gonna come back stronger. Because this was already
Of
solid.
course.
And I know that whatever you're coming back with is gonna really blow up.
You
Because
have
you're
this time to
taking it.
grow and
Yeah.
change and evolve. So, of course,
Yeah.
you're not going to just stop there.
I'm not gonna stop. And I think I think it's the Jamaican in me where like I can't stop.
Oh, of course.
I wish I could stop, but I can't stop. And a part of me knows what's at stake. So I relate a lot to you in that your family has allowed you to do what you do, except my
Hmm.
parents are not entrepreneurs. So my name is Saray Walters. My whole Walters family is very like professional oriented. So my dad is an engineer, all of that. Like they're into like titles. I got doctors in my family, all of that. People were disappointed. Well, let me not say disappointed, but they were kind of surprised when I decided to become an entrepreneur because it's like, oh well, you're supposed to be a doctor. You're gonna be a doctor, and
Yes.
I do want to get a PhD because I'm very heady, right?
Hmm.
But I never saw myself being a medical doctor. But I always was really creative and like I always, was a good leader. So I'm like, hey, where do you go if you're creative and you're a good leader? I'm like, okay, I tried this career. Okay, tried this career. Okay. A lot of people wanted me to be an attorney. I love talking. I love defending people. But
You got a brother?
huh?
You have a brother?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I don't think so. I don't think so. I know a guy named Tayon, and his last name was Walters, and I was like,
Um
that's not your brother. You would have been like,
no, no.
no, that's not your brother.
No, yeah. Okay, but I feel like I know that guy. Anyway. No. Yeah.
It was the same, like when you were like attorney and like engineers, I was like, you know what? Y'all a little too similar for me.
Nah, 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 no. No. But that's the type of family I come from, and then it was all this
Yeah.
thing of like, oh, well, you're gonna be either an attorney. People were like, oh, you need to be a judge because, like, let me tell
Hmm.
you, they
Something
would always give
huge.
me, yeah, they would always give me that, and then I would always be like, well, what do I like to do? And I remember like growing up, I was big into like trying to discover what I liked to do. So I wrote down everything I like to do. I'm like, hey, like I love to leadership, I love to write, I'm really creative, I love to design. So I love to do all this stuff. Okay, what do I do? I'm like, okay, my skill sets, I feel like, and as hard as it is, I feel like my skill set is really one of a founder. And people don't understand that because it's like,
Yes.
oh, like, what do you mean? But I feel like it's the only thing that I do that allows me to use all of my gifts.
Yeah.
And I never
Yeah.
felt that with anything. I never felt that with anything else. I felt like if I was going into marketing, I would just be a marketing person. If I was going
Yeah.
into management, I'd just be a manager. And I wouldn't be able to really be my fullest self or live to my fullest potential. So I tried a lot of different careers. And it was disappointing for my family because it's like, well, you have the potential to earn so much money. Why did you do this? Why did you choose this? But I'm still learning how to be
Hmm.
unapologetic. I'm still learning how to stop apologizing for my decisions because I think I do. I'm very a traditional. Let me not say a traditional, but I'm very like I was very like one of the model kids growing up. That it's when you come from that identity to do entrepreneurship can be tough because it's like man, for the first time in my life,
It can.
I'm letting people down and that's what I experienced. But at the same time, I've also been able to come into people who support me and have supported me on this journey. So I
Yes.
believe that the journey is so much bigger than you. When you surrender to it, I get so many emails. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you. Like I'm
Hmm.
inspired. It's bigger than me. Cause who's 22 out here doing what I'm doing? Not many. Black women, not many. So I
Not
think that
many.
I
And a lot of
yeah.
people. Go ahead.
No, but that's what I think about. I think about the fact
Go
that when
ahead.
I wanted
Yeah.
to do what I was doing today, I didn't know anybody like me. And the fact that I can be that person for people
Hmm.
where they have a business idea, I talk it through with them, or they want advice for something, I give it to them freely. It's like, wow, because I didn't, even coming into the entrepreneurship at 21, I didn't have any real mentors that were like, hey, let me help you. Everybody was just so focused on themselves.
Yes.
So because I'm so young, not only am I approachable to a lot of people who need help, but I also am in a position to help those who are my age group who might not feel as comfortable going to a much older person. So I do recognize the power
Yeah.
that I have in and the influence that I have, and I don't take that lightly.
Definitely. And I think that just you being someone that is not willing to conform is big in itself because so many people are so okay with conforming. And when you choose not to, it's huge because you're going against the grain. And I think that we don't have enough examples of that. And we don't have enough examples of that that are just kind of starting or even just someone to reach out to, especially when you come from Caribbean families where it's like, okay, if you're not going to be a doctor, you're going to be an engineer. If you're not going to be an engineer, you're going to be a nurse, you know? And what if I don't want that? And I think just being the one person in your family to change that narrative and not even just change that narrative because when you really look at it, jobs are so conforming. You're pinned down to a salary. You are now, and a lot of people don't work in cubicles, but you're literally confined to these spaces. You're confined to a salary, you're confined to a location. Now with remote work, it's a little bit better, but you're confined to working for someone else. And with entrepreneurship, yes, the risks come, but you can have income that has no glass ceiling. I mean, even with being, what I really want to do is I want to be the face of intentional travel one day. Like, hopefully, in the
Yeah.
next 5 years, I will be the go to face in the travel industry that talks about intentional travel. Because influencers out here are having, it's literally the amount of people that follow you 300,000 followers, and you can make this one person I know, she has 100,000 followers on Instagram, and she just got a deal that was worth $15,000. She made $78,000 in her first 2 months of the year. And that is a salary. Especially, I'm an engineer, so salaries start at like 100,000, 120,000 for my field. But a lot of people, that $78,000 is what barely what they'll make in a year after taxes. And it's just like doing that. She pursued that passion, and it led to her doing something that has no bounds. She creates those bounds, and she is now not she she's not confided into a space. She's constantly creating her own space. And when our parents, when generations, when people start seeing it like that, they'll be less fearful of pursuing something that is freeing.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And that's facts because I feel like a lot of people make more money from influencer money than they do from their own job. But what I will say about being an influencer that I see a lot of people, I think a lot of people want that, but they're not prepared to
Hmm.
really put in the work either.
Yes.
Because it is a lot. I mean, I don't even know how these girls do it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to be
Hmm.
an influencer, and you
Me.
really, you really have to be passionate about it. And I think that I see so many. I'm happy for the creator economy because I think it's opening doors that were
Hmm.
once closed. However,
Yes.
I also do see a lot of people putting out like low quality stuff and
Hmm.
expecting to just go viral, like, and it's just like, oh my God. Like, I think
Yeah.
the best influencers they put out really quality stuff. And I think that's how they're able
Yes.
to grow so fast. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. Like, oh, like what quality am I putting out? Um,
Hmm.
can I come with full force? Yeah, like, and I also think people don't look at the fact that it takes time to grow. It takes time for
Yes.
people to grow. So I think I always hear people say like, "Hey, I'm trying to go viral and quit my job," but it's like, "Hey, it's your
Hmm.
heart in it," because like the creators whose heart is in what they do, I feel like they show up so different from those that are just
Yes.
trying to do it for money or just trying to do it for a cash grab. And then companies gravitate towards them because they've been able to build a community of followers, of people who are invested in them so much that if they
Hmm.
show them a product, they're gonna buy. I think
Yes.
people have to think about like building that relationship with their
Definitely.
community, building that conversation before saying, "Hey, I want brand deals," and I want because I think, like we said, we're so consumeristic that we go viral once, we're going to the creator influencer agency. Hold up,
Yes.
where's your
That don't
community?
work.
No.
That don't work. We have to be willing to, people have to be willing to commit to it. If you, just like you're willing to commit to your job, be willing to commit to your passion and put in
Yeah,
the same amount of
absolutely.
effort that
Ooh.
you do into that job. Because that's what it is.
And I also think it's cool. I feel like it's cool to be a Gen Zer and not want to be an influencer. That's also cool.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people sometimes I'll be like I'll see people from college and I'm like, okay, they're trying to be an influencer to escape that job. I see you.
Hmm.
Like I'm like, okay. And I agree with it, but there's more than one way to be successful. And I think even
Hmm.
in creative communities there can be so much competition, there can be so much pressure that I really feel like you have to define yourself for yourself. And I would hate to
Yes.
see anyone let their job title, even if it's of influencer, um,
Hmm.
affect who they are because there's mental health struggles on both sides of the coin. Um, and these brands can be so fickle. I know.
Definitely.
So it's something where it's like even if you're on that route, please take care of yourself. Yeah.
It's, I think, and also just the difference between like a influencer and a content creator,
Hmm.
because so many people now are like, they're creating for their creative passion,
Yeah.
and other people are like, oh, I like working with H&M, so I'm gonna post H&M, or like, I like fitness, so I'm just gonna post all these outfits. Like, a lot of these things, I think now that digital media is becoming so, it's like becoming the thing, people need to continue to remember that, like, your passion can be creating content on crocheting, your passion can be creating
Exactly.
content on
Niche content.
sustainability.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like some people forget that, and I think it's a really big part of like, even STEM people, engineers have made it their I know like a STEM engineer that is a content creator makes like STEM content, which is really cool. But it, like, anything that motivates people to be better or do something better for themselves, is needed in this world.
Yeah, I feel like I love that we're having this conversation, and we're gonna wrap it up pretty soon. But because
Hmm.
I remember I had a conversation with someone, and they were like, oh, it's easier to just be an influencer and get money and da da da. And I remember I was like, man, that's a great idea for you, but I'm big on like education. I'm big on like um I feel like I'm big on content rather than influence.
Yeah.
I do not want to be anyone's influence. I just want to live my life, have my
Hmm.
products. And another thing too is like as an entrepreneur, pushing someone else's products isn't necessarily a good strategy for me as I build products. So I
Yes.
think about like the long term for me, and I was like, this is just not for me. I know some women who get in that space and they love that, but I'm more so like, hey, I want to educate the masses. So I feel like that niche
Hmm.
content, that's for me. The conversational content, that's for me. So you also got to know what's for you. And I wouldn't tell anyone to force fit their personality into a box. Like honestly, they send me some makeup from NARS. I could care less. I don't even wear it. I
Yes.
know I'm not going to give the energy that someone whose passion is makeup is going to give.
Hmm.
So you have to know who you are. And I think going into any of these spaces, know who you are, know what your passions are, align yourself with your passions, have that long-term strategy for how you're going to get there. Even if you're working your full-time job, you talked about your friend who is supporting their family. That is definitely great, but still keep your dreams, keep your goals. You're a human beyond that. And I think that's the point of
Yes.
today's conversation. Go abroad, do new things, find new ideas. And even when you have a misstep or things don't go your way, understand that's a part of the process. Our lives are not as
Hmm.
perfect as our Instagram feeds. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Be true to yourself. I mean,
Mhm.
you know who you are, and there will always be someone somewhere, whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers, whether it's your professors, whether it's the people at work, they're always going to be telling you who you need to be. And when you get the confidence, when you get the audacity, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
When you get the audacity to pursue yourself, your passions, your wildest dreams that don't even have to be wild, you will, when you choose yourself, you are going to be the most dangerous person in this world because so many people don't have that opportunity. And so many people, and even fewer take that opportunity.
Mm.
So choose yourself, have the audacity, and take that action because the only thing that's stopping you is yourself.
Yeah. Facts.
Unless you literally have no, like, unless you're literally a rock, there is
Big
always something
facts.
that you can do
Yeah,
to
no,
change yourself.
facts. What would you say to those people that say passion doesn't matter? Because I remember in college, I was such a naive little girl.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I was called idealistic. I was told, oh, well, passion doesn't matter. Da 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 da. And I think about the fact that as I'm very, I guess you could say very pragmatic, but I'm also very passionate. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
everything I've done and I've performed at a super high level at has been driven by emotion, has been driven by
Yes.
some sort of passion for me. I would say passion feeds my ambition, right? Because my
Yes.
ambitions are not just for myself, they're often for a larger vision or thing that I feel like has to happen in the world. So what would you say to those people who say like passion doesn't matter? I don't care about it. What do you say to those people?
You know, I'd say that I never truly understood you,
Ooh.
but there are those people in the world, and I've had to understand that that is also a path. Just like my path is something that I choose because it is true to me. To some people, that, what is it called? That need to fulfill a purpose is not there.
Mm,
And some people just are happy with doing what they need to do. And we that follow our hearts, follow our emotions, follow our purpose need to be okay with that. Because some people looking in think that pursuing a passion is insane.
yeah.
And sometimes us looking into those people that are like, I don't need to pursue a passion, I can just work and I can be content with working. We may think that's insane, but to each their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's always something driving each and every one of us, whether that's
Yeah.
money, whether that's buying a new car, whether that's experiencing the world. There is always something that drives us, and we don't need to be nitpicking and judging what drives each other. Unless it's something crazy, like something crazy. You know what I'm saying? But there's always something that's going to drive us, and everyone has their own driving factor. And I think as long as we're pushing each other along, as long as we're pulling each other to get to what's driving us and get to that goal, I think that's all we need.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that because that's like the spiritual thing of like you're driven by something and you're fascinated by something for a reason. And I
Yes.
always say that there's a relationship because one of my favorite, I think it was like a Nike commercial, LeBron was like, "Hey, like there doesn't need to be any more of me. Like, no, go out there and be the best you that you can be." And I think that's really what we need more of in the world. I always say like we need everybody. We need people who want to join existing companies. We need people who are going to start companies. We need people who are going to buy from companies. We need influencers who are going to
Yes.
sell to the masses. It's an
Hmm.
ecosystem. And in the economy, we are all connected. So wherever
Yes.
your heart brings you, that's definitely where you need to be because you're there for a reason. And I think that
Hmm.
boils down to that sense of purpose. All right, y'all.
Yes.
So this has been a good conversation.
It
I'm gonna
has.
I'm gonna close it here because I think they've gotten a lot. They got a lot out of this
Yes.
conversation.
A
So I want to
lot.
thank you, Imani, and yeah, we will be reflecting as well. Thank you to our listeners. All right, everybody, take care.
Thank you.
Wow, this episode was nothing short of powerful. That was my caffeine for the week. Oh my God, I hope you all are empowered to seek your purpose and emerge into the world bolder, brighter, and stronger. If we made you feel that way, then we definitely did our jobs. We covered so much ground from American culture and cultural experiences abroad to the lives and identities of Black women to balancing your work life with your passions. This episode truly had it all. I hope you really sat down and listened and re listen and let all of the insights really soak into your spirit. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for another episode of The Purposeful Professional. Until next time, stay purposeful, stay professional, my friends. Bye.